Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's video. My name is Angel DeSantis. In this video, I'm going to talk about how to sever ties with the religious community. And basically, I was born and raised in a cult. And so in doing the thing that I'm doing now, I have had to walk away from a lot of relationships. And in that time, I got good at it, which I don't know if it's like, yay, I got good at it, but I noticed a pattern and I noticed how to ease myself out of the situation, because when you grow up in a religious community and you no longer want to be a part of it, there's a very kind of specific set of demonization that they do to you, and there's kind of a setup. And I thought, well, if there's a setup, there must also be like an exit. And so I kind of worked out an exit plan for myself, and I started being able to kind of shimmy my way out of all these relationships that were continuing to try and bully and shame and like demonize me into staying into this religious community. So I have two things. One is how to do like a hard cut of a relationship, and two is how to ease yourself out of a relationship. So, and I've had to do both multiple times. And when you are trying to leave a religious community, first they do like the love bombing, and I will link a video for love bombing because that's a really important thing to know. But they do the love bombing. They do the, why are you trying to leave? How can I help you? And then all of a sudden you start getting all this attention that you didn't get beforehand. But as soon as you start acting up, all of a sudden you're really important to them and you get all the love bombing. And when you continue to walk the path and it then becomes obvious that you are not going to like return to the fold, or that you're going to kind of go your own way, then comes like the evilness. Then comes the, look at you, you're a terrible person. I can't believe you're doing this. You're turning your back on God. God's going to have to punish you. Do you really think you're capable of doing anything good on your own without God? Like all of that stuff. And it's all designed to chip away at your self-confidence so that basically you hate yourself enough to stay in the religion. That's the play. And if you continue walking out and you continue loving yourself, then you will win 100%. But I want to talk about the severing of a tie for somebody who is continuing to try and do this pattern of making you feel ashamed enough to stay in an abusive relationship. And the thing about that is that it's an abusive relationship setup. And in some cases, the religion is the abusive thing, and in some cases, the person is the abusive thing. So this goes for both. And in my attempts to walk away from people, I have noticed that abusive people and abusive religion, they try the same thing. And again, it's that thing of trying to make you feel ashamed enough, ashamed of yourself so that you stay, and you don't have enough confidence in yourself, so you need them to give you the answers. So the abusive cycle is that first the person or the religion comes up to you and tells you that you are bad. And if you grew up in religious trauma, that's just the worldview, is that the world is basically bad. And in this abusive setup, they tell you, you are bad. And then if you believe them that you are bad, then you have two options. One is you are then punished, but you are told the whole time that you deserve the punishment. Or two is they give you penance. And if you believe that you're trash and that you deserve this horrible treatment, then you will try and prove your worth by paying the penance. And the thing about that setup is that it will never be enough. You will never pay enough penance for somebody who needs you to feel terrible about yourself. And abusive religions need you to feel terrible about yourself so you have a lack, so you stay, and they can help you fill that lack with God. So once you notice that it's either penance or punishment, then you get to decide, do I want to either receive the punishment? Am I willing to pay the penance? Or is it just a hard no, and I recognize this is an abusive thing, and now I'm going to walk away? And when you decide that you have enough inside of you to walk away, which you do, and you must believe that, but once you find that out and you say, okay, I'm going to take the next step to walk away, the piece that you have to kind of fix inside yourself is the understanding that the abuser or the oppressor will tell you that you are a villain. They will say, you are horrible, you are hurting them, you are doing this, you are doing that. And it's a demonization of you. And again, it's the last ditch attempt to make you feel so ugly in yourself that you choose to stay in something that is ugly. But if you are able to understand that this person or these people or this organization is going to see you as a villain, and you can be okay with that, then it makes the cutoff a little bit easier. And it's very difficult to take that on when you know you're not a villain. Like, I know I'm not a villain. I know that I did the right thing. But in the moment, what I had to reconcile with was that these people that I love and that I had respected up to this point all think that I'm horrible. And it's a devastating thing. But if you can take it, if you can understand that these people are going to cast you as a villain because you're not doing what they want, and if you can understand that you're not actually a villain, but in their story you are, then you can choose to walk away a little bit easier. It does make the walkout a little bit more tolerable and a little bit easier, because you understand that, yes, they've cast you as a villain, but they're bad writers and it's a bad story. And the most interesting character in that story is the villain. So yeah, be the villain, walk away. But it requires both the ability to walk away and the ability to understand that they have cast you as the villain, but you are not. So that's the first one that's really important. And I had this interaction with somebody who had grown up in this same cult. They are no longer a part of it, but they called me and they did this thing. They did the abusive setup. They called me to tell me how horrible I was. And this was someone that I hadn't heard from in a while. So I picked up the phone being like, oh, interesting, this person is calling. And I picked up the phone and they were very upset with me for this project that I've been doing, where I talk about religious trauma because I think it's useful. And they called me to tell me how horrible I was and just a list of things, of the ways that I was terrible. And I was interested to figure out if it was going to be punishment or penance, because I knew that is what was coming next. So then I asked, okay, how do we fix this? Like, what's your end goal? And it was punishment and penance. They had a list of ways that I could make it up to them. And I needed to apologize and perform things in order for them to feel like they could stay in this relationship with me. And I said no, because it was ridiculous. I understood where it was coming from because it's an abusive cycle, which this person hadn't broken from yet. But I said no, and they weren't expecting that, because abusers abuse you and oppress you in the hopes that you never say no, that you never figure out that you have that autonomy to say no, that's it, no more, and walk away. And when you are able to do that, they lose their power. And that's why as you get more and more aware and start to walk away, their behavior towards you gets uglier and uglier and uglier. And this person didn't have any sort of relationship with me, and I think they had realized they'd lost that. And then that's when all this ugliness came out. And when I said no, I'm not going to do the punishment and I'm not going to do the penance, I think it's time to end the relationship, then came the last ditch attempt of just how this person viewed me and how ugly I was to them. And again, it's that thing where they're casting you as the villain and they're hoping that you will feel bad enough for being cast as the villain in their story, which you have no control over. But they're hoping that you will feel bad enough to then do the penance and the punishment. And I didn't feel bad enough to do that. And I said, no, you can go ahead and cast me as the villain. I understand that to you, I'm the bad guy, and I'm sorry you feel that way, but I'm not going to sit here and do punishment and penance because I don't want to be in something that is oppressive. And I severed the relationship and was able to walk out. And I know that this person is going to keep me cast as the villain for how long it is. But if I wasn't okay with that, then I would have to keep myself in this cycle of being close to or having a relationship with somebody who doesn't actually like me. They get power from trying to oppress. So that is the first thing that I wanted to say of how to sever a tie completely, is be willing to be cast as the villain and remember that you have the power to walk away, and then do it and come be a villain. Because I got to tell you, it's better than being oppressed. Come be a villain with me. And then the next thing is how to walk away from a relationship that isn't that abusive, but that is maybe disappointed in you. And a lot of us have to deal with this, where we have people in the religious community who still love us, but they're really sad that you are the way that you are. They're just disappointed at your choices. They're sad that you're choosing to no longer be a part. And it's that very self-righteous, it's just, it's pretty terrible. And I'm sure you've experienced it. I'm sure that something is coming to mind right now of like, oh yeah, that, where they're like, we just feel so sorry for you, but come back to the fold whenever. And you're like, yeah, no, thank you. But the way that I walk away from those ties, because those ties are not super abusive, so you don't necessarily have to sever them. A lot of times, all they need is time to understand that you've been able to live your life. You're a good person. You are now thriving and like very joyful and happy. And they'll get there eventually, sometimes. But in that interim, you don't want to have people in your life that always show up and are just disappointed in who you are. So for those people, this is my other thing that I figured out, is you have to have a conversation with them where you kind of tell them how you're uncomfortable, or being like, hey, I'm going to continue walking this way and I would like your support. And generally they'll say yes, because they're still trying to be, quote, good according to whatever religion they're in. But if you are needing to continue to walk away, which I definitely was, my next tip is that you decline an invitation twice, and then generally they will stop asking. So you have the uncomfortable conversation of, hey, I know that you're not on board with this or whatever, but like, I'm feeling this way and I'm going to keep walking this way. And they say, great, I support you. And then the next time they invite you to something, be busy, be doing something. I've come up with a lot of things. I've taken on classes. I used to teach yoga at studios back before the pandy. And sometimes I would take a class on and then be like, sorry, I can't, I'm booked, I'm on the schedule. Because I knew that I wanted to move away from these people who were constantly just a drag. They're just always disappointed in you. And they want you to know that they're disappointed in you, in the hopes that's kind of a more of a low level oppression thing, but it's unconscious for them. They're not doing it on purpose. But they're hoping that you'll see their disappointment, and in your attempt, because you guys love each other, in your attempt to stay connected with them, you'll eventually come back. So they do still invite you to things. But what I've learned is you have one uncomfortable conversation, and then you decline an invitation twice, and then generally they don't ask again because they wait for you. And you can also say like, hey, I'm taking time for myself and I'm going to need a little bit of time, so I'm not going to come to a couple of things. And then again, you turn down 2 invitations, and then generally you're good. That is what I have found has worked for me. And this is a study case of one, so take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But I wanted to come on here and just say what I do, because I know for a lot of us leaving religious communities, you do have to sever a lot of ties, and it's difficult every time. And this is just the thing that I have figured out that works for me is, one, when I need to sever a tie, I am willing to be the villain, and I'm willing to walk away. I'm okay with the cast, and I'm willing to go. And with the other one, when I'm trying to walk away from a relationship, I have the uncomfortable conversation of either, hey, I need a little bit of space, I need a little bit of time, or hey, I'm going to keep walking this way and I don't want you to be disappointed in me. And then I decline 2 invitations. And then generally that's enough time for us to kind of walk away from each other, or more closer to who we're being. And sometimes you walk away so much that the person comes in and you have to do the first thing that I talked about, which is letting yourself be cast as the villain. But I think the most important thing is to always remember that you have agency in your life. There are choices that you need to make for your sanity, for your mental and emotional health, and you deserve the opportunity to make those. And the people who try to stop you from those are people who do not belong in your life. If you say, I need this for my mental health, and somebody says, no, you don't, you're overreacting, that person shouldn't be there. They shouldn't have access to your mind, because if you've come from a background of religious trauma, there is already voices in your head that are disappointed in you. You don't need someone who actually voices to you that they are disappointed in you and you are doing it wrong. We're all doing our best. I know that I am, I know that you are, and you deserve people around you who understand and recognize that you're doing your best and look for ways to support you. So I hope that this was helpful. If you have a way that you figured out to walk away from relationships from these religious communities, leave it below. I always love hearing other people's, the way that other people do it. And like, if you figured out a pattern, let me know, because I'm interested. But I hope that this was helpful. I always forget to mention this at the beginning, but please click like and subscribe because it helps. And I do have a religious trauma course, which I will also link below. But I appreciate you being here if you've made it this far. Yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you for doing the work. And I'll see y'all next week.